Lo guys, this is your friend here back a new fanfic. Part 1 this fanfic link in description, and if enjoy you this fanfic then please press the like button and please subscribe to channel for more fanfic upload. Now let's start fanfic. 2 weeks before academy graduation exams. Naruto was currently looking out a window in a hallway on the second floor of the hospital. He had an arm on the window with his forehead resting on his arm. His eyes were downcast and roaring around in emotions like a giant storm off the famous Great Lakes, rumored to be on another continent far from his home. Just to clear things up, while the elemental countries does look like China, I'm making it another continent just in case I put any Asian references in. Many people wanted to come comfort him, but they stood away because they weren't entirely sure how he would handle them trying to get through to him. This was understandable considering how often his chakra would flare. He was constantly going from despair to his friend's fate and anger at himself at not being able to prevent it in the first place, as well as at those responsible. Every time he got angry at himself or those he had cut down, his chakra would flare. Not in large scale, since on an unconscious level he knew that it would not be a good idea to let his chakra loose in a hospital, but every time he flared, you could see a small aura around the blonde. One that would occasionally have the smallest tint of red in it. This red tint that would sometimes occur was another reason they hung back. The doctors and nurses knew that the boy was still in control. That was not the problem. The problem was that if you got too close when the red tint was there, then you would start to really feel what the kid was feeling. That red tint was like a radio tower broadcasting the kid's emotions to a small, 5-foot radius area around him. Whenever someone tried to get close to him while that tint was there, they would gasp and quickly draw away. What they did not realize was that the Kyubi was trying to get them to just leave his host and student alone so that he could work out his problems by himself. Although if this kept up, he was going to take matters in his own hands. Naruto just sighed and once again went through the loop of his thought track. Hard C to easy B rank my foot. We were outnumbered, outmatched, and outclassed. We should never have taken that mission, even if we could have handled it if that info had been correct. I should have been able to do more. Because of my weakness, Mato and Hiza could have died. As it is, they'll be lucky to still be ninja in a year. I should have just trusted my instinct. Flashback, village hidden in the leaves. On approach to Hokage Tower, 4 days prior. Team 7 was currently headed to the Hokage Tower to get a new mission. They were planning on getting another C rank to keep their skills sharp. Sparring with each other was all good and all, and they were improving that way, but sparring each day only held its charm for so long. The team all agreed that it would be a good idea for them to get out of the village for a short time. As they got to the gate, the guards nodded at them and let them through, and they made their way to the floor where the missions are handed out. Once they reached the floor, the team found to the genin's surprise that along with the Hokage, Iruka and Mizuki were currently working the desks. The two would often do this during the summer months to keep a steady income, but the academy wouldn't be out for another month or so. Iruka, noticing the looks from his former students, chuckled and before they could ask told them about how one of the main water lines had busted when a student got a little too trigger happy with a water just you his family had taught him and had somehow forced the water from the main pipe to come after him. Naruto shook his head at that. Apparently the guy hadn't even mastered the just you, which would have allowed him to control where he drew the water from for the attack. Now, because one student hadn't finished working on one just you, the entire first floor was being drained today. While the Hokage still found it slightly amusing, it also still gave him a headache thinking about all the paperwork he had to do because of it, shadow clones or not. Shaking his head to get that particular memory out of his head, Sarutobi looked up at the team that was quickly becoming one of his favorites. And not just because of Naruto being in it either. This team had an almost perfect track record. They always finished their missions on time and almost always returned to the village without a scratch on them. But unlike most teams that became that good, they didn't let it get to their heads. They were confident, not cocky, a trait he was glad the team members shared with each other. Those three knew their limits, and they were not afraid to admit those limits. Smiling inward to himself, he decided that now was not the time to think along those lines and got the ball rolling. Hello Team 7. Here for your usual. Or would you like another C rank? C rank if you please, Hokage-sama. We all feel that we need to get out of the village for a couple of days at least. Kakashi answered while his three charges nodded their heads. Sarutobi nodded, knowing that even with Naruto's shadow clones doing most of the work, they take that the team needed to get out of the village every once in a while so that they not only could keep their skills up, but to get a change of scenery. Very well, let's see what we've got. He pulled out the list of C-rank missions and began looking through them. A few of them caught his eye and he read them out to them. All right, we have a simple courier mission to the capital. Nothing special on that one, just sending a few documents to the daimyo. There is also another courier mission to the Sand Village, again nothing special on that one. And finally, we have a bandit elimination problem. A group of bandits have been striking a few of the merchant supply caravans that are usually sent here. We believe that they are a relatively small group. The caravans that are usually attacked carry supplies such as emergency grain and medical supplies. Although a few have been ninja supply caravans, which lead us to believe that they are opportunity strikes and that they sell off what they don't want. Which will it be? He said, looking up. Kakashi looked to his squad and noticed Naruto unconsciously cracking his knuckles. Raising an eyebrow at the blonde, said blonde realized just what he did right then and got a little embarrassed. I take it you want to take the bandit mission, Naruto? Kakashi asked with his patented eye smile. Yeah, I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with any of them, but it could be a good workout. The other two simply nodded their heads in agreement with their teammate and Kakashi accepted the mission scroll for the bandit mission. Opening the scroll, he gave it a quick glance and told his team to grab their gear for a maximum week-long mission and to meet him at the North Gate in an hour. Nodding, all three shushined away, which surprised their former teachers who looked at Kakashi like he just grew a second head. The Hokage just chose to raise one of his eyebrows at the copy nin. Kakashi noticed and his face, or what you could see of it anyway, clearly said, "What?" Before he too left in a poof of smoke. Hidden Leaf Village North Gate. 58 minutes later. Everyone was waiting at the North Gate for Naruto to show up. The other three found this slightly odd since Naruto was usually at a meeting spot at least 5 minutes before the time to meet. Although he was late a couple of times, it was always for a good reason. Suddenly, they heard a poof of smoke and turned around to see Naruto standing behind them. There you are. We were starting to worry about you, Naruto. Hiza said, smiling at her friend. Naruto just got that smile of his and started rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry guys. He said, I had a short run-in with Konohamaru on the way here. Although I still have that bad feeling that I had half an hour ago. I better stay on guard. He thought to himself, looking down for a moment. He then looked up. So we going now or what? The others nodded and they proceeded to leave the village behind. Forest in the Land of Fire. 2 hours north of the Hidden Leaf. Kakashi, Mato, and Hiza were starting to worry about their blonde companion. While it is true that on missions he was more quiet than usual, this was nuts. He kept having a serious look on his face like he was trying to figure something out and not getting any closer to it. Finally Mato had enough. Making sure he knew where to land next, he turned in midair and looked at Naruto. Hey Naruto. What's wrong? He said before landing and kicking off again, not even looking down when he came close to the branch, although he did take a quick glance over his shoulder when he kicked off again. Still facing his teammate, he continued. You've been like this ever since we left the village. What's bothering you? Naruto just sighed and said, I honestly don't know, Mato. I've been having this feeling since before we left, but for the life of me I can't figure out what. Hiza just shrugged and said, maybe it's just nerves. Yeah, but why would I be nervous about going against a bandit camp? It's not like this is the first bandit raid we've done, and I didn't feel anything like this the first 2 times. He commented. Kakashi turned his head from his position in the lead and decided to add his 2 cents. While I highly doubt that we will run into serious trouble on this mission, Naruto, if your gut is telling you something, it is best to follow it. All 3 of you be on guard. The 3 young shinobi nodded their heads and continued. Next day. It had taken the group a little over 24 hours to reach a close proximity to the area that raids were to usually happen. While it is true that they could have gotten there a lot faster, the group wanted to preserve their energy, so had gone at a relatively slow pace. When they got to the area where their mission scroll said they should be, Kakashi nodded to Naruto who, since he had done this before in previous bandit raids, knew what to do to help them locate their target. Going through the necessary hand signs, he quickly had a large group of shadow clones around him. After he had created the clones, the original bit his thumb and started making hand signs. After a quick sequence, he slammed his palm on the ground and a large cloud of smoke and a bunch of pops were heard. When the smoke cleared, there was a large pack of regular-sized kitsune. Forgot he could do that, didn't you? With a nod from the original, the pack immediately separated and each fox went to a different shadow clone. The pack had done this before previously, so knew what to do. Each pair of clone and fox left to go see what they could find, while another fox, this one a bit larger, waited with Naruto. This one was the overall leader for the pack and would be staying with the original to help coordinate if he chose to keep the pack around. It wasn't long before the pack had located the bandit camp. Naruto quickly recalled the pack, and when they came back, they quickly told the others about what they saw. Report. The lead fox said when everyone was back. One of the older foxes said, Naruto-sama, the camp is approximately 20 miles from here and consists of about 30 or some bandits. They are situated in a group of tents that, while are sturdy, they look like they can be moved easily. I believe that they move around every once in a while to stay hidden. Didn't work this time. Mato muttered under his breath, though everyone heard him the same. Naruto nodded to the fox to continue, and it did. While most of the tents look like they can only hold 1 or 2 people at most, there were 2 tents that were considerably larger than the others. One of which smelled heavily of steel and iron. I believe it is safe to assume it's where they keep their weapons. The humans nodded at this. The other tent smells more like a tavern and is most likely where they have their meetings. Another nod. The camp is located in a small clearing with a sentry's post hidden in the trees around the clearing halfway between each compass point. Means instead of the USUA you have them at NA Northwest SESW, there is 1 archer in each post. That is all. Naruto nodded, and seeing how there were only 30 bandits, decided to send the pack home since his clones should be able to make light work of them at that few of a number. With a yip, the whole pack went back to their summoning realm. As Naruto would soon learn, that was a big mistake on his part. Because unknown to the pack and shinobi, these weren't regular bandits. They were missing nin who kept that little secret by only using regular weapons and taijutsu. 30 minutes later, the group decided to play it safe on this one and use an exploding variant of Naruto's shadow clones to take care of the group. Messy, but the best way to deal with the group. However, what they hadn't counted on was that these bandits were able to guess that when the only thing the clones did was actually enter the camp and just spread out evenly, that something was wrong. Right before they blew up, all of them used substitution justice. Right after the explosion, the missing nin tracked down Team 7's position. And that is when all hell broke loose. With Team 7 heard the explosion and got ready to move out to take care of any stragglers. They were on their way when one of the groups of so-called bandits ran into them. As soon as the nuke nin saw them, one of them launched a flare, signaling the others. From there on out it was one big mess. While Naruto was able to get a ton of shadow clones out, none of them could really do much since the nins kept using wide-range attacks to take them out en masse. The team was able to hold out for about half an hour before all hell broke loose. Naruto's POV. Mon. I knew I should have listened to that feeling. I thought while dodging a guy who was wielding a 6-foot blade like a twig. I don't know how long we can keep this up. All of a sudden I heard a scream of pain. Finding an opening, I quickly made 2 hand signs and grabbed the guy's wrist. As soon as I made contact, the guy immediately lit up like a Christmas tree as over 1,000 bolts went through him in a matter of seconds. With him out of the way, I turned around and noticed Hiza with a hand over her left shoulder and a bunch of arrows sticking out of her. Mato was standing over her, but he wasn't in much better shape either. All of a sudden, the two were hit by a devastating wind attack which quickly cut through their bodies. I could see they were still alive as I blasted the guy who did it with a wind attack of my own that immediately killed the bastard when I saw 4 nins coming to finish them off. Realizing that they couldn't do anything, I put all of my chakra into my legs and hoped to God that I could get there in time. Hiza's POV. I knew we were in serious trouble. I had gotten hurt by an electrical attack which shot my reaction time to hell. Right after, a bunch of arrows got me as well as an earth spear attack straight through my left shoulder. Mato stood over me trying to protect me, but he got hit by the same electrical attack and got even more arrows trying to keep me safe. All of a sudden, I heard a sound that told me we're seriously in trouble. Wind style. Stripping wind Justu. I know Mato heard it as well, and we both tried to get out of the way. But our bodies wouldn't move, and we got hit head on. I felt so much pain go through my body, I was sure I had lost a limb or two. Then I heard another wind attack, thankfully from Naruto. Wind style. Wind scythe Justu. Even though I couldn't see it, I somehow knew he had killed the other guy. All of a sudden, Mato and I saw 4 guys coming at us with swords, and I knew this was it. Closing my eyes, I waited for the pain to come when I suddenly heard a squelching sound and a warm liquid hit me. Opening my eyes, they immediately went wide with horror for they're in front of me. Mato's POV. We were in serious doo-doo, and I knew it. I had tried to protect Hiza as best as I could, but I ended up getting hurt just as bad if not worse. I felt the wind just go straight through my body, and it felt like I went through a blender. I heard Naruto cast a wind just of his own and somehow knew he killed the guy who sent the other one. I mentally sighed in relief. I didn't think I could handle another attack like that. All of a sudden, I saw 4 nins land on a branch in front of us. Each one had a sword and I saw the grins on their faces and knew that this was it. They suddenly pushed off at a high speed straight for Hiza and me, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw her close hers. I kept my own eyes open, determined to not give those bastards the satisfaction that would give them when a blur streaked right out of the corner of my eye and stopped right in front of us. I had just enough time to see Naruto facing the nins with his arms outstretched before the nins got to us. My eyes instantly widened when normal POV. Squeal ch. Naruto had just barely gotten in front of his teammates in time. However, it came at a terrible price. He now had 4 swords ran straight through his body straight to the hilts. His lungs, stomach, and kidney were all punctured. He noticed the shock on the nins' faces at what just happened and turned his head to look over his shoulder at Mato and Hiza, who both had looks of horror on their faces mixed with blood over their bodies. "Are you guys all right?" he asked, and Mato just nodded numbly. The 4 ninjas smirked and as one pulled out their swords. Then one of them spoke up. Well, I guess it's true what they say. You Leaf Ninja will give your lives for each other. Too bad you're all going to die anyway. Although I guess the 2 of you are lucky to have a friend willing to die for you. But it's over now. With that said, the 4 stepped up to finish the job when all of a sudden, Kyubi's POV. Kyubi watched from inside the seal as the human he has come to call his son and his teammates did their best to survive from the overkill that the so-called bandits were becoming. Even as he watched in fear for him and his friends, he couldn't help but be proud at how they were holding up. All of a sudden he heard a scream of pain in a voice that he recognized. When his son turned around, he saw the other two brats on a tree branch together in a real bad shape. All of a sudden he felt the wind being manipulated and saw an attack hit them dead on when they tried to move their unresponsive bodies to get out of the way. He immediately sensed his son's shock and rage before he immediately manipulated wind as well and killed the person who dared attack his friends like that. When his son turned his head again, he saw the four ninja with the swords and immediately knew what was going to happen. His son put all the chakra he had into his legs and Kyubi put in some of his own to help even as he had one thought, this is going to hurt like hell. All of a sudden, he felt enormous pain rip straight through his son's nervous system. He watched as his son asked his teammates if they were all right, listened to the nins laughing and mocking his son, all the while rage was slowly building up. Right when the nins began coming closer, red chakra started flowing past the seal with one thought running through his head. Not this time, you bastards. Kakashi's POV. Kakashi was having a bit of trouble himself. He had resorted to using his Chidori much the same way Naruto used his chakra hands and was cutting through the ninja every chance he got. But it was tiring to keep the Chidori going like that and he was running low on chakra. He had just got through the last bastard around him when all of a sudden, he heard a scream. Turning around, he saw the nin shoot a wind just towards two of his students. He watched in growing horror as they were hit dead on. He saw Naruto hit the guy with a wind attack of his own which killed the guy by beheading and then saw as he turned his head and immediately became a blur. Kakashi's horror only grew when he saw four swords pierce his sensei's son's chest. Grief and rage built up inside of him when all of a sudden he felt a chakra that had not been felt for close to 13 years. And all of a sudden, hell came to earth to visit. Normal POV. All of a sudden, red chakra formed around Naruto, completely healing his injuries. The ninjas started to get scared and started to back away, but then something happened that made them literally piss in their pants. The chakra took on the form of a fox head and then covered him in what could only be called a cloak of chakra that made the kid look like a giant one-tailed fox. But it wasn't just the appearance that made them scared. It was the feeling they got from it. It felt like the devil himself was there, and they knew they were dead. Naruto stood up and immediately killed the four by slicing straight through them with a horizontal cut, causing them to fall and the two halves of their bodies to separate on the way down. Think of what happened to Darth Maul in Episode 1. Out of the 30 ninjas that were at the camp, 12 had not entered the fight yet, hanging back as reserves while the others fought and were the intruders down. Now while some would call that being a coward, these guys knew they were the weaker group and hung back thinking that they could handle any after the others were done fighting. They laughed when they saw what happened to the three kids and thought to themselves that it would all be over soon. And they were right. Just not in a way they thought. They watched in shocked horror when the red chakra came out and as the blonde kid sliced straight through the other four ninja with nothing but his chakra-covered arm. Their horror grew to extreme levels when the kid that they now knew was a demon in human skin turned to face them. And then there was nothing left of them. The other three members of Team 7 were not sure what exactly had happened. 1 second Naruto was on the branch with his two teammates. The next second, he was next to the 12 ninja that hadn't joined in, with the only thing showing that they were ever actually there a bunch of limbs strewn about. A second later, the red chakra went back into Naruto's body, and he dropped to a knee and started panting. He took a few breaths and headed back to his two teammates who just looked at him in amazement and with just a small bit of fear. Kakashi came over as well and started looking at his charges. Realizing that while some of the wounds were certainly severe, given proper first aid they were not immediately life-threatening. He and Naruto started patching the two up the best they could before taking off as fast as possible to the leaf with the two on their backs. En route to the Hidden Leaf Village. 1 hour till arrival. Naruto and Kakashi were using as much speed as they could to get their teammates to safety. Whereas it had taken them more than a day to get to the camp, they were now running like they had hounds from hell on their heels, cutting the travel time down to 5 hours. Mato and Hiza had been slipping in and out of a type of semi-unconsciousness. They were both trying to figure out what had happened to their best friend while they were awake. Finally, Mato couldn't stand it anymore and asked from Kakashi's back what happened. Naruto sighed since this was definitely not how he wanted his friends to find out about his adopted father. With a heavy heart, he told the two about what really happened almost 13 years ago and about how he had gotten training from the Kyubi who was now more like a father to him than anything else. The two were shocked about what Naruto had been hiding from them for all those years but realized it explained a lot about the blonde, especially the looks he used to always receive from the villagers and how he always seemed to heal so quickly. Naruto told them that he would understand if the two no longer wanted to be his friends, which immediately shocked the two to their core. Hiza's response was one that Naruto really needed to hear and that Mato could only nod his head while agreeing with her. Why would we want to no longer be friends? You are a jail, not the prisoner. And by the sounds of things, that prisoner didn't do what he did on his own free will either. You both have gone through so much that has not been your fault. It wouldn't be right to leave you, nor do we want to. Both Naruto and the Kyubi inside of him were grateful to the two. Naruto and Kakashi continued on their way, both glad to have heard what they did. Hidden Leaf Hospital. As soon as they got to the gates, the two still standing ninja were immediately escorted to the hospital where doctors quickly took the two wounded and started working on them. The copy nin and his student then waited for a few hours for the doctors to come out. When they did, they gave the two news that shocked them to their very cores. Mato and Hiza had taken too much damage to their bodies. While the arrows and lightning-style Just You attacks certainly did a number on them, it was the final wind Just You that was the straw on the camel's back. It had cut through the muscles and bones, making their arms and legs practically useless. While the doctors had been able to heal their injuries, the damage had been done. While the injuries were healed, they had been so severe that it would be at least a year before the two could even think about doing more than AD rank. And even that wouldn't be for at least 2 months while their bodies were taught how to properly move around again. There was actually a 5% chance that the two could never actually be ninja ever again. Naruto was shocked to hear this and went into a state of depression afterwards, blaming himself for what happened. And I know that some of you are wondering why the two did not body flicker to the village. The reason is simple. The Shushin technique is not a long-range teleport technique. It has a limited range. It would not make sense to make jumps with the technique when they were in an extreme rush and could better use their chakra the old-fashioned way. End flashback. Naruto's mind was a mess. Kyubi was about to drag his son into his mindscape and smack some sense into the kid when both demon and host sensed a familiar presence come close. All of a sudden the two felt a pair of slim yet well-built arms wrap around the blonde's waist. Hinata had heard what had happened when she overheard her classmates Sakura and Ino talking about how Ino had seen a blonde kid and a silver-haired Junin racing to the hospital with 2 kids on their backs. She had immediately ran to the hospital and when she found Kakashi sadly leaning against a wall, asked just what had happened. Listening to Kakashi, she immediately grew shocked at what had happened. She knew about the Kyubi since Naruto would sometimes take her into his mindscape to train with the fox since the big guy thought he could show her a few things while he was in human form. She had been shocked to learn the boy she had become so close to held a demon she was taught was killed in school. It didn't change how she saw him though, for which he was grateful. After her talk with the scarecrow-like Junin, She went looking for her favorite blonde-haired friend only to find him leaning against a window with his chakra pulsing, occasionally with a red tint whenever someone got too close. Somehow instinctively knowing what was going on, she walked over to her first real friend and wrapped her arms around him, causing him to tense slightly. Rising a little on her toes, she whispered into his ear, "Don't worry, Naruto. Everything will be all right. I'm here for you." Hidden Leaf Village. Day after, bandit mission. Word of what had happened to Naruto's team got around the village fast. People were wondering how a mission could have such bad intel for it. Almost everyone was wondering how a genin team that has only been together for just around a year could have gotten out of that without actually any of the genins dying. Most of the younger groups figured that Naruto had proved his nickname of one-man army and simply swamped the missing nins with so many numbers that they had to fall. Most of the older ninjas however had another idea. They believed that Naruto had somehow tapped into the Kyubi's power when things got rough. When some of them confronted Kakashi about this idea, they were shocked to find they were right. There would have been a mass panic except for the fact that Kakashi told them exactly how it happened. When the older shinobis heard about the conditions they were in at the time, they realized the blonde had no choice in the matter. And while they were concerned that he had done it at all, they were relieved to hear that he dropped the chakra cloak as soon as all the enemy nin were taken care of. They all agreed to keep the fact that Naruto had used the Kyubi's chakra to themselves and that they would do their best to make sure the actual truth was not made known to the younger group by encouraging the Shadow Clone Army rumor. It goes without saying that when Naruto heard of this he was extremely grateful to them. Meanwhile, the Hokage had decided that Naruto was not mentally fit to be on active duty right now and gave him and Kakashi the week off so that he could cope. Speaking of Naruto, he was handling what happened reasonably well thanks to Hinata. The two had a long talk the day he got back and she was able to get him out of his depressed state. The two started spending so much time together that they actually moved from just friends to something more. And while it wasn't a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship yet, they were definitely getting close. In the afternoons for the next couple of weeks, Hinata and Naruto were almost always seen together, whether they were training or just hanging around the village. Mizuki and Iruka helped out as well. Both had their own talks with the blonde while Mizuki took it one step further by helping Naruto pull off a few pranks to blow off some steam. What really did the trick for him was when he painted the Hokage monument so that each face's hair had a different tie-dye color to it. No one knew how he managed doing that without being noticed until he was done, though some wondered briefly if he could do genjutsu after all. There was one other person that really helped Naruto pull through: Rock Lee. Lee would challenge Naruto at least once every day and would really put the sapphire-eyed boy through his paces. This was good for Naruto because it not only made him take his mind off the mission, it also pushed him to get better with each match. By the end of the week, the blonde was back to the way he was, and was ready for active service again. But although Naruto was mentally ready to be back on active duty, he and Kakashi were only a two-man team, meaning they could only do D ranks until they got new teammates. And while Naruto had been relieved to hear his two teammates would be fully recovered in a year at most, neither one want him or Kakashi to wait for them. So it was decided that Kakashi would receive two of the academy students that would be graduating in a week. Naruto was hoping to get Hinata as one of his new teammates, but unfortunately the council had other ideas. They had basically ordered Kakashi to take on the last Uchiha due to the fact that he had the Sharingan. This in itself wasn't the problem though. The problem was that Sasuke was Rookie of the Year and the top kunoichi always went with it in team selections. And while Hinata had been progressing quite rapidly, she was still just behind another girl. One by the name of Sakura Haruno. Naruto was convinced the council was out to screw him over after he found out. He had asked Hokage if it was possible to get the Hyuga heiress on his team, but when the Hokage took it to a council meeting, the council said that rules were rules. Now normally, Naruto would have been fine even with the Uchiha. Sure, he was an arrogant jerk with a worse superiority complex than his classmate Neji. But Naruto was sure he could knock some sense into the so-called genius if he really had to. No, what really made Naruto pissed was that according to Hinata, this Haruno girl was the worst kind of kunoichi out there, a fangirl. Groaning when he had heard this, he had asked to see the girl's stats from Iruka, who when told that she was going to be his teammate let him see the girl's records. Naruto was not impressed when he saw that she was only the top kunoichi due to her book smarts. However, Naruto was willing to give the girl a chance, and hopefully be able to get her out of her fangirl stage. Because besides oath breakers, the worst type of ninja in his book was someone who became one to chase after someone else. In Naruto's book, if you become one to prove yourself, fine. But do it to try and get a boy or girl, and you're a waste of the teacher's time and energy. While both Hinata and Naruto knew that they couldn't be on the same team, they agreed to get together as often as they could in between training and missions. Naruto told Hinata that if she ever needed help in her training to keep coming to him whenever he was in the village. With the graduation exam coming up, and being 2 members short of being able to take missions outside of the village, Naruto and Kakashi decided to give Hinata special training each day after the academy, getting her ready for the big day, which Hinata greatly appreciated, and by the end of the week she felt ready to take the test head-on. Day of graduation. Team 7's training grounds. The day was pretty much the same as the rest of the week had been for Naruto and Kakashi. One thing that was different was that Naruto had walked Hinata to the academy that morning. When the two reached the academy, Naruto had wished her luck and pecked her on the cheek. This made Hinata go into a heavy blush since she was still amazed of Naruto at times. Seeing her blush made Naruto chuckle and he sent her off with a quick goodbye and give them hell. This made Hinata break out of her blush and giggle a little before nodding and walking into the academy ready for whatever it would bring. Naruto had noticed Mizuki leaning against a wall when this happened, who happened to be grinning his head off while he watched. Naruto just cocked his eyebrow as if to ask, "What?" causing Mizuki to burst out laughing. Rolling his eyes and shaking his head a little, Naruto had waved and headed out to meet with Kakashi at the training grounds. Which leads us to the present. Naruto and Kakashi were both panting while standing across from each other. Ever since the two had met up at the training grounds, they had been going at it with each other all morning, stopping only for a quick lunch before starting back up. While this in itself wasn't too unusual for them on some days when they would be working on taijutsu, today was almost pure ninjutsu, and the two had never gone on this long with just that form of combat. While the two hadn't used any killing moves, they had used so many justice per minute that anyone passing by would think that the Fourth Great Shinobi War was taking place. This was the scene that Hinata walked in on with a smile on her face, which quickly turned into a look of complete awe when she watched. Hinata's POV. I was walking from the academy to Naruto's training grounds feeling real good about myself. I had passed with flying colors in the graduation exam and I couldn't wait to tell Naruto and Kakashi-sensei. When I got close, I could hear that the two were going at it with ninjutsu but didn't really pay any mind to it since I just figured they were keeping their skills up. That all changed when I walked in with a smile on my face only for my eyes to open wide at what I saw. Naruto had just launched a huge water dragon at Kakashi-sensei, who quickly used a water wall to defend and immediately sent out water bullets to counter Naruto's attack. Naruto countered with an earth wall and, taking a page out of his sensei's book, sent earth bullets at his teacher, who countered with a lighting move that looked like a bunch of Senbon needles shooting out. Think Sasuke's Chidori attack when fighting Deidara. While most of the needles were stopped when they collided with the earth bullets, a good number kept coming towards Naruto, who quickly used one of his wind justice to knock out the Just You. When Kakashi saw this, he took advantage of the wind by sending a fire Just You towards his student. Just as the fire reached him, Naruto summoned a water wall which the fire immediately made contact with, causing Naruto to be encased in a cloud of steam. All of this happened in about 15 seconds and I was amazed at the speed that their hands were moving in the hand signs they were using. Normal POV. Naruto was using the steam cloud as a chance to catch his breath for a second. As it dissipated and he began ready to go at it again, he noticed Hinata standing at the entrance to the training grounds. Kakashi noticed where he was looking and saw Hinata as well. Naruto just looked at Hinata before asking, "What?" Hinata shook herself out of her stupor and said, "Sorry, it's just that I've never seen anyone use justice that fast before." Kakashi chuckled and said, "Well Hinata, if you thought that was fast, you should see Naruto when he gets serious." Hinata gasped and looked at Naruto, who had the decency to blush a little while scratching the back of his head while laughing a little. "Ah, don't listen to him Hinata. I'm not that fast." Kakashi just chuckled but left it at that. Remembering why she came, Hinata told the two about how well she did in the exams and the two told her that they never had a doubt how well she would do. Deciding to celebrate, the three took off to Ichiraku's Hidden Leaf Village Academy. Day of team placement. It was the morning of the team placements, and Hinata couldn't help but sigh while she was sitting down, thinking about how it wasn't fair that she couldn't be on Naruto's team. At least she knew that her other teacher, Kurenai, would be her new sensei. She was always a mother figure for her after her mother had died. She sighed again as Sasuke's two biggest fangirls, Ino and Sakura, got to the door and were arguing about who would get to sit next to their Sasuke. Hard to believe that Sakura will be on his team instead of me. Though I bet she will be happy to know that her precious Sasuke will be on her team. Hinata thought to herself while putting her head on the desk waiting for Iruka to come in. It wasn't long before he did, and when he got everyone's attention, he started giving the speech he always gives his graduating class. Afterwards, he started listing the team placements. Everything was going good till he reached Team 7. Team 7 will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, said Imo looked up, and Sakura Haruno. Iruka said only to be interrupted by a yell from Sakura, something about true love prevailing. After getting a glare from not only Iruka but also most of the girls, she sat down and Iruka continued. Due to certain events, you two will be joining the members of last year's Team 7. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake and your fellow genin will be Naruto Uzumaki. I suggest you two listen to both of them. At the name Naruto, the whole class started whispering while taking occasional glances at Hinata, who, getting a little nervous from all the attention, sunk down a little into her seat. Sasuke and Sakura were thinking to themselves that it was odd that they were joining a team that had been made last year and were wondering just what had happened to the other two members. Wonder why it's just these Naruto and Kakashi people. Sakura thought. Naruto and Kakashi Looks like I get to have some training with the guy after all. Sasuke thought, remembering what Iruka and Mizuki had said about Naruto a while ago when Hinata had wiped the floor with that fangirl. Iruka finished explaining the team formations and told them that they had 1 hour break before needing to be back in class to meet their new Junin instructors. Hearing this, Hinata did a shushin out of the classroom, surprising the hell out of everyone else. When did she learn to do that? Iruka thought before remembering Naruto telling him about how Kakashi had taught him, Mato and Hiza how to do it but that they only did it when they were in a hurry. Guess Naruto and Kakashi taught her more than just taijutsu, he thought with a chuckle while leaving the classroom. Outside of the classroom in a branch of a tree, Hinata watched the reactions of the class and smiled. Damn, that felt good. She thought to herself before jumping down to go find her two new teammates. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, Naruto's pranking side has rubbed on her a little. 1 hour later. After the hour was up, the class was all back in the classroom waiting for their new instructors. It was only a minute or two when the first one showed up, and boy were the class surprised. Instead of an adult walking in through the door like they expected, a blonde-haired boy with whiskers on his cheeks and the bluest eyes they have ever seen came in and went to the teacher's desk. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Will Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno please come with me? While he said it politely enough, almost everyone heard the undertone that told them it wasn't a request. While the two students were getting up, the two had different thoughts. This is the one who trained the Hyuga. He don't look like much. Sasuke thought to himself, thinking that he could take him. Not in your lifetime, kid. He looks kind of cute. Oh, who am I kidding? He's hot. But not as much as Sasuke-kun. Sakura thought to herself while her and most of the girls noticed a very well-toned muscled body which spoke of years of training. While the two were stepping down to the level Naruto was at, he was looking around the rest of the classroom. Spotting Hinata, he gave her a small smile which she returned. When the two rookies got to him, he nodded to Hinata before leading his new charges out of the classroom and into the village, thinking to himself, this should be interesting. Hidden Leaf Village. En route to Memorial Stone. Naruto led his two new teammates out of the academy and started heading towards his training grounds, or more specifically, the Memorial Stone that is next to it. As they left the academy, Naruto decided that he should give the rookies a fair warning about what to expect about him and Kakashi. As they passed the gate, he started talking, gaining the two's attention. All right guys, since we're going to be a team now, there are a few things you should know about me and Kakashi-sensei. First and foremost, if we tell you to do something, you do it. We won't be trying to make you go through any sick initiation rites or anything like that. We personally find them a waste of time. That being said, if we tell you to do 50 jumping jacks while singing the alphabet, we expect you to do exactly that. Both rookies looked at like he was crazy, but Naruto ignored them. Second, and you will have to forgive us for this, but we are still recovering a little bit about what happened to our team. Sakura took this as a chance to ask what had been on her mind when she heard that they were joining an older team. Naruto, I've been wondering. What happened to make your team lose two teammates? Naruto got a hard look on his face before continuing, bad intel. Now don't interrupt me. As I was saying, Kakashi and I are still handling it, so you will have to deal with a few perks. While I've been able to cope a lot better, Kakashi has taken to short periods of brooding, though not often. One other thing, Kakashi will probably be an hour late at most meetings, and before you ask, it's because he is remembering things. Me and my teammates had gotten him out of that in the past year, but with what happened 2 weeks ago, he's slipped back into it, although fortunately it's not as bad as before. I'm still working on getting him out. But know this, once he gets his head on straight, he is one hell of a teacher and he does not take upstarts lightly. At this he glances at Sasuke and continues, neither him nor I care for names. You earn you place with us. Don't expect us to baby you either. You better know right here and right now that I will make your life a living hell if you don't pull your own weight. Sasuke just scoffed at this, thinking that there was no way Naruto could pull through with that threat, while Sakura was starting to get nervous. That said, he continued, if you do what we tell you, I guarantee that you will come out a lot better than you came in. After that he grew silent while they kept walking to their destination. I know it is a big change in attitude for Naruto, but remember that he just lost his two best friends as teammates and really doesn't like Sasuke's "I'm better than you" attitude. Meanwhile, Kakashi was at the Memorial Stone thinking about how he had lost his own team and now almost lost two of his students in a similar fashion. I promise Obito, I will do my best to keep your nephew safe, and I won't let anything happen to your son either, sensei. He thought to himself while also promising himself to do the best he can for his students. Suddenly he sensed a presence that he has grown to care for, like that of an uncle to a favorite nephew. Naruto was here. The genin and two genin hopefuls came to the training ground of Team 7 to see Kakashi kneeling down next to a memorial stone of some sort. Even though he knew his teacher knew they were there, Naruto spoke up. Kakashi-sensei, I've brought our new teammates. Kakashi just gave a slight nod showing he heard and took a few moments to collect his thoughts. Standing up and then turning around, he gave a quick eye smile to Naruto, who returned it and then looked at his new charges. My first impression of you two, you got a rude awakening ahead of you. The two hopefuls looked startled and Sasuke immediately got angry. And what's that supposed to mean? He asked with an edge in his voice. He immediately regretted asking when Naruto swept his legs. Looking up, he saw Naruto looking down at him with a frown. It means that you have a long way to go, Uchiha, and I would watch what you say around us. Sakura watched with a frown, thinking that Naruto was being a little rough, but put it down to missing his former teammates. Kakashi just sighed and helped Sasuke up before turning to Naruto and said, I'll take him, to which Naruto just nodded and put a hand on Sakura's shoulder. Before she or Sasuke could ask about what they were doing, the two shushined their new charges out of the area. Rooftop of the academy. We're back at the academy. Sakura noticed when the smoke cleared. Kakashi and Naruto walked past her and Naruto hopped over the back of a bench that was there and sat on the end while Kakashi walked around and leaned against the rail facing him. Boy, this brings back memories. Naruto said softly, to which Kakashi nodded. Then when they both realized the two hadn't followed, Kakashi asked, well, aren't you going to join us? Both hopefuls started and came to sit next to Naruto with Sakura in the middle and Sasuke on the end. All right, you three, let's introduce and talk a little about ourselves so that we know a little bit about each other. Kakashi said once they were all seated. What do you mean, sensei? Sakura asked while Naruto slightly rolled his eyes. How thick can you get? I can't believe she was the top ranked in book smarts. You know, your likes, dislikes, dreams, and hobbies. Stuff like that. Kakashi said. Why don't you go first so that we get an idea? Sakura said. Kakashi and Naruto shared a look at how ironic what Sakura and Hiza had said were. Both thought the same thing. At least Hiza just wanted me, sensei, to go first to get to know me, him. I know. It is always the girl, isn't it? But trust me, that is as far as the similarities between her and Hiza go. Oh man, sensei just gave it to her as plain and simple as possible and she still doesn't know. How did this girl ever survive the academy? Naruto thought to himself. Kakashi had similar thoughts but decided to play along. Very well. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I'm the kind of person who doesn't feel like talking about his likes and dislikes. My dreams for the future are none of your business, but anyway, I have lots of hobbies. Sasuke and Sakura both sweat dropped while Naruto burst out laughing. He said so much but we only learned his name. The two thought. Naruto had a much different thought. I so should have seen that coming. Never let it be said that Kakashi-sensei has no humor. Kakashi, having a good idea about what Naruto was thinking, chuckled as well while the other two were wondering just what kind of team they were in. Sakura finally couldn't take it anymore and asked, what's so funny? The two older guys stopped laughing and Naruto said, inside joke, and left it at that. All right, now that I've gone, it's your turn. Why don't you start, Pinky? Kakashi said, which earned a glare from said pink-haired girl. All right, my name is Sakura Haruno. I like glances at Sasuke with a blush. I dislike Ino. My hobby is, again looks at emo kid, this time with a blush. My dream. Again looks at duck butt and lets out a small squeal. Great, she's worse than I thought. Naruto thought while Kakashi thought along the same line. Looks like Naruto wasn't kidding when he said we had a lot of work to do on this one. You with the duck butt hairdo. Kakashi said, pointing to the Uchiha, which earned him a glare from said emo and a chuckle from Naruto. And before you guys say anything. Yes, I am being cruel to him, but in truth I can sometimes picture a story where he and Naruto are best buds and even brothers in all but blood. It just depends on the story. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. There are plenty of things I hate, but I don't see that it matters, considering there is almost nothing I do like. It seems pointless to talk about dreams, that's just a word, but what I do have is determination. I plan to restore my clan. And there's someone I have sworn to kill. He is so cool. Sakura thought looking at him. Kakashi and Naruto just shared a look before Naruto said under his breath. Idiot. Unfortunately, everyone heard him and Sakura got mad and tried hitting Naruto on his head only to have him grab her wrist even before she raised it all the way. What really shocked the two hopefuls though was that he did it without ever breaking eye contact with his teacher. Sasuke was shocked thinking that if he could do that without looking then what else could he do? But soon his pride took over, and he said in a dangerous tone of voice, "Care to repeat that, Uzumaki?" Said blonde just sighed. "I said you were an idiot." When the Uchiha continued to glare at him he continued. "I know that you lost your clan and that you are in pain and angry at the one who did it. But having nothing but hate gets you nowhere. I will respect your wish to get justice for what has happened, but if you can't find something to protect in the meantime then you are only limiting yourself." Sasuke couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing Naruto's collar, he jerked the blonde across the front of Sakura and got right in his face. "What would you know of my loss? You lost two teammates who I might add, are still alive. What do you know about losing your whole clan? Or about the pain of being alone? Huh? Answer me." Sakura was shocked at the outburst and starting to get scared while Kakashi had one thought. Now he's done it. Naruto looked into the last Uchiha's eyes and gently but firmly removed the heir's hand from his collar and with a calm voice that made even Kakashi shudder said. "I know what pain is, Uchiha. I have grown up without knowing either of my parents. Know who they are, yes. But getting to know them, no. You at least had your family for a while before they got taken from you. As for being alone, for most of my life no one in this village would ever give a damn about me. Most of the villagers had hated me and some even tried to kill me once. So believe me, I know what pain feels like, but I did not submit to it and you have no right to throw a pity party about it. You have always been adored and given attention. And yet you claim to be alone. Don't make me laugh." Naruto calmly sat back down while Sakura and Sasuke were in shock. Sakura because of how her new teammate was apparently treated at one time in the past and Sasuke due to what the blonde had said about not ever knowing his parents. Kakashi sighed and decided to get his team's mind off of these dark thoughts and steered them toward clearer skies. "Well now that we have that out of our systems, it's time to talk about the test you two must take. And Naruto, you will be taking it as well. I know you passed before, but this is a new team so you have to take it again." Naruto nodded at this since he figured he would have to do it again when he picked the two up from the academy. Sakura looked to their teacher with a confused look on her face. "Test sensei." While Kakashi nodded, it was Naruto who answered, "He's talking about the test to see if you will be genin or not." Sakura was shocked. But we already took one at the academy. I thought that was the test." Naruto shook his head and explained to the two how the academy test was just to see if they had what it took to be genin and that this test saw if they were actually ready for it or if they should be sent back to the academy for another year to learn what they had missed the first time. Kakashi then told them to be at the training grounds they were at before at 7 a.m. and then dismissed them. Sasuke and Sakura left right away with Sakura tried getting a date out of the last Uchiha without success. The two veterans just sighed while watching them leave and Kakashi turned to Naruto. "How you holding up, Naruto?" he asked his younger companion. Naruto just sighed and said, "Mato and Hiza, those two are not sensei. They seem to be more trouble than they are worth. The Uchiha has superiority issues while Haruno seems to be way too interested in him to actually concern herself with training. To be honest, I don't even know if I could work with them tomorrow for the test. Although knowing the council, they will probably give us hell if we don't at least pass the Uchiha." Kakashi sighed at that. I'm afraid you're right, Naruto. Especially about the council, I'm afraid. Just try and do your best and we'll try to get them in the best shape we can afterwards. Make sure you get a good night's sleep tonight. Something tells me we're going to need it. Naruto nodded and the two went their separate ways to prepare themselves for the next day. Naruto's apartment. Naruto was currently asleep in his bed. Or at least that is what anyone who was watching him would see. But in truth, he was having a talk with his father while the two were training together. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto and the Kyubi were having a mainly ninjutsu sparring match much like the one Naruto and Kakashi had that day. The two were mainly using fire and wind style justice while also using a couple of taijutsu moves if the two ever got close enough a couple of times. The main difference was whereas with Naruto and Kakashi their hands were a blur, the two fighting now were moving their hands so fast that even the longest chains of sequences only took a second or two. All the while the two were talking about the test that Kakashi was obligated to give and all the problems involved with it. You know, that council really pisses me off. I just know that they are putting that stuck-up prick on our team just to spite me. And they expect me to work well with the brat and help him pass as well. That's like asking me to jump straight to the moon. Naruto said while launching a large fireball at his adopted father who expertly jumped over it and sent a wind blast at his son while making sure none of it touched the fireball passing under him. When the wind got close enough, Naruto manipulated it into a tornado and sent it right back at the big guy. I know how you feel, son, but we are just going to have to find a way to get him and that pathetic excuse for a kunoichi to pass. The good news is that at least that girl might have a chance at being reached and brought to a more suitable level. Though I stress might. As he was saying this, the tornado came right at him and he started a spin. When he came out of it, he had spin kicked the tornado sending it off to the side where it started to fluctuate before completely bursting sending wind everywhere. Naruto shook his head when he saw that and said, I can't wait for you to show me how you do that, father. Said Fox just grinned and said, in time, my son, before launching a fireball himself at the blonde who to his small amount of surprise saw his son create another tornado around him that turned into a fiery vortex when the fireball hit it. The fox got a proud grin as he watched his son maintain the funnel without it touching him and he started building its power up. Then with a motion of his arm, the blonde gestured to the fox and the funnel bent and rushed. The fox turned human. The fox just stood there and then absorbed the fire into his body. Hey, no fair. Naruto said playfully. His father just laughed and said, you're just jealous. You got that right. Naruto said with a grin, before they decided to call it quits for the night. Naruto sighed. We still have no idea what to do about the test tomorrow. I mean, Kakashi told us it would be the same test as before, but how the hell am I going to get the Uchiha to listen to me? I can't even do the same thing I did last time since I'm sure Kakashi won't have that book with him, so I can't blackmail the guy to make it easier on all four of us. The Kyubi nodded before saying, maybe you should knock the kid out and fight with a shadow clone transformed to look like him. Naruto considered it for a moment before sighing and shaking his head. No good, that would just make it even harder to work with the guy when we do pass. And I doubt his fangirl would appreciate it either. The fox sighed knowing his son was right and just said that they would have to figure something out in the morning and bade his son good night. After returning the gesture, his son left the mindscape and truly went to sleep. The next day, Training Ground 7. Naruto woke up at 6 the next morning and got ready. Half an hour later, he was out of the door heading to the training ground at a reasonably fast pace across the rooftops. While he knew that Kakashi might be at least a little late, he knew it would still be a good idea to get there a little early. At the very least, he could set a few traps up. He got there 10 minutes early and created 10 shadow clones. Nodding to the original, the group began unsealing shuriken and kunai launchers that Naruto had built himself with the help of his former classmate Tenten. They made sure that the launchers they used were chakra-triggered instead of tripwire-triggered since they were not sure how good the two rookies were around traps, if at all. Approximately 5 minutes later, everything was set up and the clones dispersed themselves, giving the original the memories of where the traps were placed. Just as this happened, Sakura and Sasuke entered the training grounds with Sakura once again asking Sasuke for a date and getting the usual response from the emo kid. When the two looked to the training grounds, they saw Naruto and headed over to him. Naruto was currently drawing on a copy of a map of the area he had made after the first bell test to help when he, Mato, and Hiza would play war games with Kakashi. Right at the moment he was marking where all the clones had set up traps thinking that he could try and get Kakashi boxed in close to one of them with help from the other two although he personally wasn't holding his breath. As the two approached him, Sakura suddenly remembered something. Naruto. Said blonde looked up from what he was doing and Sakura took this as an invitation to continue. I just remembered something, Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke-kun. Naruto's got an irritated look for a quick moment at the word, kun. And I had talked about ourselves yesterday, but we never did hear about you. Yes, I will admit I forgot him, but now that I think about it, this actually works good for the story. Naruto just looked at her for a moment before realizing that was the truth. Very well. He said. As you know, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like reading, and playing the occasional prank, though I don't do it as often nowadays. Both raised their eyebrows at that. I swear, it's a recurring theme with these guys. I also like hanging out with my friends and the occasional meal of ramen. I dislike bullies and those who think they are better than others just because of who their parents were. A pointed look at Sasuke. I also dislike those who become ninja just to impress someone. This time a pointed look at Sakura. Sakura was starting to get edgy while Sasuke was starting to get mad. And I really hate traitors and oath breakers, as well as those who make assumptions without getting all the facts. As for hobbies, I like to learn how to play different instruments, another eyebrow raised by the two. I am a semi-amateur gardener, and like learning new justice. As for dreams, I want to make my parents proud of who I am and become Hokage. Sasuke snorted and Naruto raised an eyebrow at him. How can someone like you be Hokage? Sasuke asked. Naruto just shook his head and said, that is what I hate about Uchihas and most Hyugas. You all make assumptions without all the facts. He left it at that when Sasuke got angry and tried to get in a fight again. But Naruto just unsealed a guitar to the surprise of the other two and started playing Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson. In a branch nearby, Kakashi listened with an eye smile. He had of course seen what Naruto's clones had done and he approved of the choice to use chakra-tripped launchers instead of trip-wired ones. He had also seen Naruto draw on a copy of the map he had made of the area and knew that he was going to share the info on the traps with the two hopefuls once the test started. He also had a feeling that Naruto knew he was there, but he just sat there listening to the music since it wasn't very often he actually heard Naruto play. And besides, he was just as good on a guitar as a violin or Native American flute. When the song ended, he shushined to a spot directly behind the hopefuls making them jump. Naruto of course knew his sensei was there ever since he himself had came to the training grounds, which surprised him, but he figured Kakashi just wanted to see how he and the other two would interact while they waited. Deciding to play along he had kept the fact that he could sense his sensei nearby a secret, although he did make sure not to set up any traps where his teacher was. Didn't want Kakashi getting any ideas about messing with them after all. So it was no surprise to him when his sensei appeared right between the two who he had been forced against his better judgment to help pass what was to come today. He secretly enjoyed seeing the other two jump while looking at Kakashi with an even look before deciding to have some fun and adapted a look of surprise. Kakashi-sensei. You're actually on time. Is it going to snow today? Naruto asked, getting weird looks from Sasuke and Sakura, while Kakashi, who knew exactly what his favorite student was doing, decided to play along. Why yes, didn't you get the weather forecast? There is going to be a huge blizzard in a couple of hours. Naruto just grinned and said, well then, I guess we should hurry and get started then. The other two realized that they were having a fast one pulled over them and started getting mad when the other two burst out laughing at the looks on their faces. When the two got serious, Kakashi told them about the test with the bells, which Sakura had immediately pointed out there were only 2 bells but 3 of them. Very good, Sakura. You obviously had no trouble in math class. The reason why there are only 2 bells is that the one who doesn't get a bell by noon goes back to the academy. Not only that, but you will be tied to one of those poles over there and watch while I eat my lunch. Oh, and Naruto, I didn't bring my book, so don't even think about pulling that stunt again to pass. Sakura was angry at the first sentence, but she and Sasuke both got worried looks at the second sentence, which quickly turned to confusion when they heard the final sentence. Turning to Naruto, they saw him grin while he looked like he was remembering a particularly funny memory. Finally, Sakura let her curiosity get to her and asked, Naruto. What is Kakashi-sensei talking about? Naruto burst out laughing, much to the chagrin of the Cyclops in the group, and just said, well, let's just say last time I showed my appreciation for a book series he likes to read and leave it at that. That only served to get them even more curious, but neither of the veterans would explain further. All right then, now that you know what this test entails, it's time to begin. Oh, and one more thing, Naruto, try to limit yourself to low chunin levels. At this, the other two looked at Naruto, who just nodded while the two shared a thought. Limit. Now then, you may begin, now. Kakashi said, and instantly shushined from the area, and Naruto immediately noticed that he had completely masked his presence like only someone of a Junin level or higher could do. Frowning a little bit, Naruto gestured to the two hopefuls and led them to the closest cluster of launcher traps, which were set up to cover the 4 main compass points. Once they sat down, Sasuke immediately asked Naruto, what are we doing here, Dobi? Why are you wasting my time when I should be getting one of those bells? Naruto raised his eyebrow at the word Dobi but let it slide, thinking that Sasuke was in denial about what Kakashi had said about limiting himself to low chunin levels. Shaking his head, he simply said, and you are Rookie of the Year, why? Sasuke got mad, but before he could say anything, Naruto continued, Kakashi-sensei is a Junin, and one of the best in this village at that. What makes you think that you, who I might add are not even a proper genin yet, can take him on by himself? I've been with him for almost a full year now, and I know almost exactly what that guy can do, and let me tell you, he could wipe the deck with you in less than 10 seconds. Sasuke got even madder and said, oh yeah. And you think you have a better chance? Oh, if only he saw the two go at it on the day of graduation. Naruto just chuckled and said, maybe. Now do you want my help or not? Not. Sasuke said and left. Sakura looked torn between following him and sticking with Naruto, who just shook his while thinking how stupid it was to let pride get in the way of a mission. Sakura decided to ask Naruto what he had in mind, and Naruto explained how he had led their teacher into a corridor minefield the first time and how he hopped to do the same with traps he had set, showing her where they were marked on the map, but told her he wanted to see how the Uchiha did before they did anything. With that said, he rolled up the map and sent a shadow clone hang to look like a small fox to follow Sasuke and see just how bad he was humiliated. Kakashi, who had seen the whole thing from a branch, once again knew that his blonde student most likely knew they were being observed and realized that the blonde had indirectly asked him to show Sasuke he wasn't as good as he thought he was. Taking off in the direction Sasuke went in a roundabout way, he thought to himself, if only he had seen Naruto and me sparring 2 days ago. He would definitely have a different opinion. But Naruto really isn't one to show off to others just to prove a point. I'll let your imaginations come up with for what happens next. Once the shadow clone had dispelled itself, Naruto just sighed and shook his head in a dejected manner. When Sakura asked what was wrong, he just got up and told her to follow him. They walked at a relatively slow pace for about 10 minutes until they came upon a small clearing. Walking in, they saw Sasuke buried up to the top of his neck in the ground and looking royally pissed off about something. While Sakura looked shocked at him, Naruto just slowly shook his head and walked towards him. Kneeling down, he asked, "You going to listen to me now or should I just leave you here?" Sasuke just glared at him even more. Naruto just sighed and said, "Come on Sakura, let's go." Sakura looked shocked. "We're just going to leave him there." Naruto once more sighed and said, "If he's not going to help then he is not worth digging out. Maybe while he is doing it himself he will realize that the only way we can get the bells is together." With that, he took off into the forest again using his nose much the same way he did in the previous test to start looking for his sensei. While it is true he could have done this in the beginning, he had decided to try and get the other two to work as a team together first. Sakura didn't seem to have a problem listening to someone with more experience than her, but Sasuke was just too proud and stubborn. Taking a page from his student's book, Kakashi had left a shadow clone to see what happened when Naruto and Sakura showed up. When it had dispelled itself, Kakashi just shook his head. Sakura wasn't as much of a lost cause as the two vets had thought, but the fact that he had so soundly beat the Uchiha and he still wouldn't accept help frustrated the two to no ends. If this keeps up, we're going to have to all out fail him. I hope Naruto sealed a ton of aspirin this morning because we are going to need it when the council learns we didn't pass him. Like the last time, he quickly realized how Naruto was tracking him and decided to save them both time by heading towards one of the traps he had saw Naruto marked down on his map. He wanted to see how Sakura would handle working with Naruto when under fire. Naruto smelled